Maggie, who's visiting you today? And who's Katrina?
Maggie and I met our very first day of preschool at Ross Bible at 3 years old. You wouldn't think you'd still be best friends with your preschool best friend, but I am. I used to go over to her house and play all the time, like every single Saturday. Maggie would invite me over, and if she didn't invite me over, I thought something was wrong. Maggie had braces, and she could do this thing where she would tuck her lip up underneath her teeth. We went to a restaurant, and I bet her to do that lip thing and ask the waiter for some water because her chicken was really dry. Like chicken, it's really dry. She went to college, she did all these amazing things, like I am so proud of her, but we had so much fun. So we went to a Backstreet Boys concert. When we got there, we decided we were gonna do this after party thing where they did like a private concert. Little did we know we were gonna get to meet 3 of the 5 Backstreet Boys. The best part was when the 2 of us got to touch the butt of a Backstreet Boy. And not just a Backstreet Boy, it was Nick Carter. And you know what, Jeremy, I have to admit, that was probably the best day of my life. Touched the butt of Nick Carter.
I think when I was born, I mean, Jeff was only 3, but I think he was excited because he was gonna have this little brother that he was gonna do boy things with. He was gonna go out and play catch and play sports and do all this stuff because Jeff loved hockey, so he was gonna have this little brother to play hockey with, and he didn't get any of those things. You know, I wanted to go downstairs and play by myself. He wanted me to constantly go out and do stuff with him all the time, and I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted to sit and play Legos or video games or play on the computer. He's such a goofball. I mean, he's either showing you stupid things on his phone, like, huh, look at this, always making jokes. Jeff and I have become like super close, and I'm so thankful for that because he's a super fun guy, super smart. He's married to Jackie and she's great. I can't imagine having a better, bigger brother.
I met Joan in high school. My brother and I went to the same high school for 1 year. He was a senior, I was a freshman. I had always thought that he would end up marrying his best friend Eric because he never had a girlfriend. We were just walking through the hall. I was with one of my friends walking through the hall going to another class, and then all of a sudden I see a girl standing next to him. And then I look down a little bit more, and that girl is holding his hand. I decided it would be a good idea for me to say very loudly, "Oh my God, Frankie's holding hands with a girl." And he looked at me and turned red. Joan looked at me and turned red, and the rest is history. Several weeks later, he finally brought her home to meet everybody in the family. We had 2 love seats, and me, my mom, and my dad squeezed onto one love seat. Well, Frank and Joan sat at the opposite end, but I remember just staring at Joan like, oh my God, my brother has a girlfriend and she's cute. I'm sure at that point Joan was like, oh my God, get me out of this relationship. Frank and Joan got married in 2011. We've had so many fun times with them. We do a lot of embarrassing things together. As of recent, I started stealing Joan's socks. Do these look familiar at all? They're yours, and you're not getting them back.
My house was burnt down by a crazy arsonist named Jeremy Davidson. He's still on the loose. If you find him, call this number, 555-3296.
When I started dating Katrina, I knew of Frank. I didn't know a whole lot about Frank. He was just kind of like this nerdy guy with curly hair, a goatee, and glasses that worked at Rite Aid that lived in their house. And then one day, for some reason, he asked me to come with him and Joan to play racquetball. So I went with them, and I remember we were hitting the ball as hard as we possibly could, just smacking it. And I remember Joan getting really upset. "Frankie, stop hitting the ball so hard." And he'd just be like, "Shut up, Joan." And for some reason, I thought it would be appropriate to go, "Yeah, shut up, Joan." And it was a match made in heaven. He and I, hit it off right away. So I used to come over to their house and sit and play video games with them. And Katrina would come home from work and she'd see my car there and go, "Oh, Jeremy's here to see me." She'd walk inside and look around and I'm nowhere to be found. There I am, sitting playing video games with her brother, not there to see her, just to hang out with her brother. Yeah, I'm really thankful to have him as a friend, and even more happy to have him as a brother-in-law.
Alex and I have been friends since daycare. She was really fun. She was different in 6th grade. I was really into being cool in 6th grade. Like, I wanted to be popular and cool and cute, and I wanted the boys to like me and all this stuff. And Alex was like, "Why do you care that much? Like, why do you care?" After about a year, 7th grade, I decided, you know what? She's right. I don't care. So then is when I got really, really weird. We created our own language, and we had a daily newsletter. We each had our own name. She was Spiffy, and I was Terrence. Continued our weirdness onto high school. I remember if she didn't hold my hand while walking down the hall, I would scream and embarrass her in the middle of the hallway until she held my hand. Alex and I both waited a few years before we went to university. We spent quite a bit of time together in our first couple of years of college. Alex and I's whole relationship has been based off of Barnes & Noble and snacks. We either A, see a movie and then go to Barnes & Noble and get snacks, or we B, just go to Barnes & Noble and get snacks. We'd sit and read embarrassing children's books in the middle of the children's section of Barnes & Noble and make all of the children feel uncomfortable while we were reading Junie B. Jones.
This is the evil frog that will take over the world. He is the most evil creature in all of the land.
I had lived on Sherman Woods, all my life. And then all of a sudden, this family moves in across the street. And they have a little boy named Joe.
Presidential candidate Joe Grant!
That's me.
We used to call Joe Superstar Joe. We still call Joe Superstar Joe Grant. He played countless amounts of sports. I remember sitting on my porch waiting for Joe to come home from whatever sport he was doing that day. He'd get out of his car and show me whatever trophy he won. He was just good at everything. When we went to middle school, I was coming from an elementary school that was not one of the elementary schools that normally went to the school, so I wasn't going to know anyone. And Joe said, "Don't worry, I'll introduce you to all these people." But I was really worried that, I didn't know how to be cool. So I remember asking Joe, "You're so cool, you're such a cool guy. Can you teach me how to be cool?" And he just looks at me and just kind of sighs and says, "All right, rule number 1, never ask someone how to be cool. First girlfriend, first breakup, first everything." Joe was there for the majority of those. I will always remember the times going down to the beach with Joe or walking down to the spirit shop to get candy. Some of the fondest memories I'll ever have in my entire life were spent hanging out with Superstar Joe Grant.
Miss Charlotte May, was born September 20th. We had the entire family together the day before she was born, and she's decided, you know what, I'm just gonna hang out in here. So that very last day, before our parents all left, we decided we were gonna make Charlotte was gonna be born that day. We went on a very long walk. We forced Joan at 9+ months pregnant to do several squats. We got ice cream, we got Taco Bell. And at the end of the night, we're like, all right, whatever, the baby's not coming, so looks like everyone's gonna go home. She was born the next morning. We finally came up and she was just adorable little chunky bundle of joy. We do this thing where she screams and then I scream and then she screams and then I scream, which is really fun unless we're at a restaurant or in public. I'm so excited to watch her grow. She looks like me, and let's face it, she's gonna be Aunt Katrina's best friend when she grows up. I'm gonna go on all of our field trips with her. Sorry, Joan, back off.
Pony boy, you okay?
Eric and I were not really friends in middle school.
Whoa, no. I brought cookies. Mom, go away. Okay.
And I wouldn't say we were overly close in high school either. We didn't really become close until college. Everybody, all our friends, had gone away to universities, and here we were stuck at SC4 with no one else. Looking back on that, without him, I would have been super depressed. He used to come over to my house, and we would get out some like Tyson barbecue chicken, make Tyson barbecue chicken. We'd take my iMac, put it outside with some lawn chairs, and we used to sit out there and eat chicken and watch Heroes. We were obsessed with Heroes. We were obsessed with Hayden Panettiere from Heroes. He used to come pick me up, and we used to just drive around and just talk about whatever was going on. We used to drive down to the boardwalk and just sit there and talk. Yeah, super romantic. He was, probably the sole reason that I made it through my first 2 years of college. And he was around when I, first started dating Katrina.
Pastor Dave came to my church, and it had to have been middle school for me, like 2002, 2003. He was fantastic. He was so fun. He was the only pastor I've ever had that was really involved in the youth as much as he was. Like a mission trip we did, we went to Maryland, did some work in the deaf church in New Baltimore. It was very, very fun. He also was the leader of the camp I went to every single year. I did choir camp, and that was on Lake Louise. It was beautiful. He was the director. We had such a fun time, and I remember him saying, like my first year that I went, he's like, you have to go to choir camp, it's fun. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna go. And I think I decided I was gonna go very last minute, and I am so happy I did. The only thing I regret is not going sooner. Maggie and I, back in our rebellious stage of church, never attended the service. But after church, we would always go up to Pastor Dave and be like, great sermon, Pastor Dave. And he'd be like, oh yeah, what was it about? And we'd be like, it was about God. He was so fun. I still love to tease him to this day. I think it was his wife, Terry, telling us that he enjoys reading the dictionary for fun. So whenever we would sit in on the service, we'd wait and try to point out when he would use a big word that we didn't know what it was, and we'd have to look it up, and we'd look it up. It was so fun, and I couldn't imagine having anyone else perform my ceremony than him, because he is one of the most influential Christian people in my life. I appreciate you, Pastor Dave.
I lost two semi-important people in my life. My little brother, some kid, I don't really know his name, but I knew him for 8 minutes.
I met Andrew for the first time in middle school. He and I were in band class together.
We should have a party.
I was at the time dating Julia Shenkar, which he was really good friends with. I don't remember this, but this is how he tells the story. Apparently, I walked up to Andrew and I said something along the lines of, you better watch your back. As in like, stay away from my woman, basically. Not too long after, Julia and I had a falling out, and so did her and Andrew. And I remember in band class, we used to sit there and Andrew would just like tease her relentlessly. And she'd try to talk to him and he'd say, you are now in a cone of silence. And she'd try to talk and he'd go, I'm sorry, but I can't hear anyone who is currently in a cone of silence. And it would just frustrate her so much. We used to make videos for class all the time.
I know what you could do.
They were terrible. I had a family member come in who was from South Carolina. I asked Andrew, can we come over? I'll introduce you to my cousin. And I show up with my cousin, and then all of a sudden I hear banjo music playing. And I look up the stairs and Andrew he's in suspenders, like a checkered shirt. And he goes, you must be Jeremy's cousin from down south. Pleasure to meet your acquaintance. That was Andrew. That was the kind of person Andrew was. Endless amounts of humor to just kind of spread around the room. I will always be super grateful for having Andrew as a friend.
My parents are the legit coolest parents ever. And some of you may think, nah, that's my parents. My parents are cool. Mine are cooler. Mine are way cooler. I mean, growing up, my mom And Dad, well, Mom especially, was very like, she wanted to be involved in everything, which now that I think back to it, I am so grateful that she was there with me and everything. Like, she experienced everything I experienced. My mom was there with me. My dad, he owned the Pavey's Little Market, the fruit market, and I think it was like every other day or so, he would go to the Eastern Market in Detroit to go pick up his fresh produce. So in the summer, when we didn't have school, I would go one day and Frank would go the other day. Well, still to this day, I'm not a big donut fan, but when we would go into the Eastern Market, there was this adorable little Greek couple that would always want to give me a donut, and I always took the donut, but I always picked the ones with the chocolate on top because I didn't obviously like donuts that much. So he would always yell at me because the only thing I would do is lick the chocolate off the top. When I think of marriage, like a happy marriage, I think of theirs. So like, I am so excited to compare my marriage to how their marriage was, like how exciting, and they still love each other. Like, I don't think I ever heard them fight with each other, like not even once. So if they did, they kept it quiet, which was nice. Either that or didn't pay attention.
Most of my memories growing up involved the shop, Autocraft. I used to do everything I possibly could to not work. I think I read through the Harry Potter books probably like 3 or 4 times each, so that my dad would come in and say, oh, he's reading. Okay, well, I'm not gonna bother him. And still to this day, my mom has always been that like person that I can, sit and have a conversation with. And there's a lot of times where her and I don't necessarily agree on things, but what's nice about my mom is she's never been the type of person to get upset or get offended that you don't think the way that she thinks. She'll sit there and argue with you, but at the end of the day, she'll go, I'm glad we had this talk. That was really nice. Let's go get a cup of coffee. You want coffee? The memory I cherish of my dad is all the movies we used to go see, just he and I. We saw all 3 Lord of the Rings movies together, and I remember every single time a new Lord of the Rings movie would come out, I would get super excited because I knew I was going with my dad, and that's like kind of like how he and I connected. I used to wake up every morning on Sunday and sit and watch MASH with my dad, and he would sit there and laugh, and he'd always look at me and do his little laugh. I would say things like, oh, I really want to do video production. And a lot of parents would say to their kids, well, you're not going to make any money doing video production. My parents were never like that. I'm sure they thought it. There was a time that I wanted to go into musical theater. And what did my parents do? They bought me the dancing shoes and the dancing pants, and they took me to my audition. They wanted me to do what I love to do. I'm super grateful.